Redo. So we shall start over again. So yes, we are the NOAM East North American Eastern Time Zone user group, as I was starting. And yes, so affectionately, we are referred to as the NOAM East. And as I was saying, here we go, hence our little gnome icon. So many of you are here probably because you are already members of our chapter. However, if you aren't, please feel free to sign up so we will hear about future sessions. And while you are here or there, I always recommend signing up for other chapters as well, even if they are in another time zone, because all of the other user groups have great information to share. And the sessions are generally recorded so that you can watch them all, at a more convenient time. Which of course brings us to our most frequently asked question, both before and during our meeting. Will this session be recorded? Yes, absolutely. Both the audio and video portions of this session are being recorded, even our little foul-ups that we have at the beginning sometimes. And will be posted shortly after the session to be our YouTube channel. You may also watch our past recordings there, along with recordings from the other user groups. Please feel free to ask questions during the session. You can also post them to the chat. We love having an engaged and interactive audience. And now, for those of you who have not met our hosts, we are your hosts from the NOAM East. So, Andy Lunsford.
Andy, want to introduce yourself?
So, Andy, go ahead and introduce yourself real quick.
Yep. So, hi, I'm Andy Lunsford, coming from my phone because my computer crashed. I am a director of data instrumentation at Razorfish, and I've actually been inside working in the analytics space on the implementation side for, gosh, I want to say close to 8 to 10 years now, somewhere in that range, and really enjoy loving working with our clients to help them better optimize their implementation and to better get the most power out of their Adobe Analytics and other analytics stacks. And I'll pass over to you, Jeff.
All right, then. And then my name is Jeff Bloomer. I've been the manager of digital analytics at Kroger Personal Finance for the past almost 12 years. And I am an Adobe champion actually for the past 4 years now. I've been on community advisors, and I've been doing the user groups here for quite a while as well. So now I'll pass this over to Jen.
All right, I'm Jen. I am the optimization manager analytics at Torstar, which is a newspaper company up here in Canada. I have been with the company for almost 18 years, starting as a developer, moving into QA, and then taking over the analytics, but doing analytics for that entire time because, I started in a team of 1.5. Ask me about that sometime because it's always funny when I say team of 1.5. Yep. So anyway, I'm also an Adobe champion and user group leader and community advisor. So, you can find me all over the place and quite frequently on the Experience League. Yep.
All right. Without any further ado, we are going to introduce our guests today. And so, first of all, our first guest that we are going to be speaking to is going to be Jen Coons. After her will be, actually, I don't think our next two guests will need much of an introduction. Will be Eric Matisoff and then Ben Gaines. So we are going to just go ahead and kind of spin things off and let them basically introduce themselves and let you know what their origin stories are. So here we go, ladies and gentlemen. It is time for our Fantastic Friday.
So I just dive in then?
Yes, you.
Yes.
We're going to let you just dive right in, Jen.
So I'm Jen Coons. I'm a principal analytics architect at 33Sticks, which is a boutique analytics and optimization agency. So I work on the data collection side of analytics and MarTech and tag managers and all of that. And I've been doing this since I started. I think you may see my Omniture scarf that lives up there. Started Omniture in 2006. So it was really funny when I found out that we'd be like telling origin stories, and then I saw that Ben Gaines was going to be here, and I actually reached out like, did you know that Ben Gaines is my origin story? Because he is. Ben and I were college friends. We lived across the street from each other. And I was a web developer, freshly graduated from college, and super hated my current job. So at least this is how I remember it. Ben, I'm curious if you even remember it, or if you remember it.
Yeah, no, I do. So far, I remember it the same way. Keep
that
telling.
I
did
like,
not know this. This is
you
great
asked
info.
how I
it.
was doing. And I was like, instead of being like, yeah, I'm fine, like a normal person would be, I'd be like, I'm miserable, I hate my job. And then said, oh, did you apply at Omniture? And I actually had, because there weren't a lot of tech jobs in Utah Valley for me at the moment. But they hadn't even called me back. He's like, oh, you didn't apply through me. So I did. I applied through him and got the job. And my entire career was off of that conversation and Ben. Yay, Ben. So yeah, I came
you
on
earned
and
it. I might have been the conduit, but you absolutely earned it. So
well, and you back then you were like client care extraordinaire kind of role, right?
I was definitely in what was probably still called Omniture Live Support at the time. What this was like 2007 maybe 2006. Yeah. So I had probably only been there for 6 months when this happened. So I was answering phone calls and live chats and things at the time.
So yeah, I started as an implementation consultant then, and I've been consulting in various orgs. I left Omniture just before the Adobe acquisition was announced because I was having babies and chasing young kids around and stuff. Then I came back, and at one point I was back at Adobe for 3 or 4 years, and but aside from that, it's all been consulting. I've been in essentially the same role since 2006. So, but yeah. And nowadays I'm based in Atlanta. I suppose I can say that much. And yeah. So thank you, Ben, for my career.
Said, I don't give me too much credit. You showed up with skills, and I'm glad you got into the right role. Obviously, it's been a good 20 years.
Yeah, almost 20 years. Yeah. Plus, it's really fun to be like, I knew Ben before he was famous. Yeah.
Stop it. What is funny is that my roommate, also Jen's friend, we like our little group that hung out in our apartment, is also an Adobe employee. He is Brian Topham leads or is one of the most senior customer care tier 7, whatever the highest tier is. That's what Brian is on Adobe Analytics today. So little group of us happened to all kind of find our way into this industry from that one little apartment.
We all used to play Mafia and sing along to Billy Joel songs, and
that's right.
Good time.
Do I go next, or Eric? Eric was next on the slide.
True.
I'll take that as yes. I'm disappointed. I'm the only one representing the holiday here. I'll say Jen is a little bit, at least she's rocking some red, so I appreciate that.
I have a heart on the back of my shirt, Aaron. There's a heart on the back of the shirt, so we're good there.
Yeah, we'll take your word for it, Andy.
Yeah, okay, I'm representing the holiday by simply being dressed up in acceptable clothes and stuff, because I'm going on a lunch date with my husband immediately after this. So.
I like the way you think, Jen.
I am wearing my pre-summit beard and lack of hair organization here. So my name is Eric Matisoff. My role at Adobe is as an evangelist focused on analytics and data science. And let's see, I've got I've got like a slightly more meandering origin story, I think, than Jen, which was pretty direct, I'd say. Ben, usually I feel like when a superhero has an origin, they have like a villain that causes them to become, that superhero. And so I don't know if Ben and Jen are on the same team or not.
The villain in my story is the place I was working for. It was a horrible like sweatshop of a web development. Like,
okay, all right.
It's horrible.
I love it.
Horrible.
Ben is like the Robin to your Batman. I'll take that. Yeah.
I also have a villain, but we'll get to that.
Okay. Nice. Awesome. So yeah, I graduated from Rutgers with a degree in computer science, and graduated knowing that I did not want to spend my life coding. And I didn't want to be a developer or engineer, just kind of sitting at my computer all day, which I imagined like was in some dark room with like a light up keyboard or something like that. And so my first job out of college was working at a business intelligence consultancy that at the time was called Double Star, based in Pennsylvania. And I like basically spent my first 2 months just reading manuals for business intelligence software like Hyperion Solutions, MicroStrategy, Business Objects. And let me tell you, it was thrilling to be just reading 8 hours a day about how to set up those systems. I highly recommend it for anyone that has trouble sleeping. But at the same time, I was really getting into enjoying really good coffee. So, I don't know if one had something to do with another. Anyway, I started consulting finally. I remember taking my very first business trip. It was a training on MicroStrategy down in Tysons Corner, Virginia. Whole lot of fun down there to be had. And then started consulting. And the best part was I had a ton of like leverage for the company because they were billing me at senior consultant rates. Yet I was like 22 and getting paid like a junior consultant, $35,000 a year, felt like the richest person on earth. So I left my parents' house, moved to Philly with 2 other guys, and I think my rent there was cheaper than it was in New Brunswick, New Jersey at Rutgers. It was like $350 a month or something like that. And so many a cheesesteak were eaten, and yeah, I actually really had a lot of fun. I worked with some really cool customers. I learned like a little bit of the art of consulting, working with brands like QVC and Independence Blue Cross. And my work at Independence Blue Cross went so well that they like offered me a job there, and I took it. And after about a month, I realized that I'd made a huge mistake in a very Star Warsy way. And at the same time, my brother got his MBA in whatever business stuff MBAs are in. I don't know about that world. And he's an older brother, like 4 years older, and he had just started working at a digital marketing agency. And I was talking with one of my roommates at the time in Philly, and he had also just started working at a digital marketing agency, a different one. And he said, I know you're not hating, but you're not loving your job at IBC as a business intelligence guy. Why don't you come work at Razorfish? And I said, great. You look like you have a really fun job. And before I knew it, he helped me get an interview. I got a huge bump in pay all the way to $40,000 a year from 35. And my roommate's name was Brian McGinty, who some of the Adobe folks in the room here may know. And I loved my time at Razorfish. I worked at Razorfish Philly for a number of years. I ended up getting married in Philly. And then after about a year, so in 2010, my wife and I made the decision to move up to New York City. And so I switched to the New York office at Razorfish. and I stayed there so long that I ended up I started in advertising analysis, so like looking at double click ad data and list data, ad data, paid search, like I download paid search data from Yahoo and Bing and MSN and Google, and then like put together some macros to kind of automate a lot of the dashboarding. And then someone on the team left, and my manager said, "Hey, Eric, can you take on their work?" And I said, "Sure." And so I automated their work, and then I had like, you know, I spent 2 weeks reporting, and then I had 2 weeks of free time, and I said, "You know what? I'm going to start teaching myself this web analytics thing. It seems really cool." So I'd spend nights and weekends talking with friends that were on the web analytics team at Razorfish. Talking about Google Analytics and web trends and Omniture. And my friend that I was talking to said, "You know what? I'm actually leaving the team. Why don't you talk to the manager and see if you can actually fill that role?" Bingo, bango. Now I'm on the web analytics team. The manager of that team, his name is Rocco Albano, who is one of the coolest people to ever come from South Philly, born and raised. He now lives in Denver and works for, I think, Merkle.
That's a name that belongs in this kind of origin story, I think. It's a good comic book kind of name.
Yes, absolutely. Rocco Albano is quite the dude. He also really got me into the band Tool as well. So if you hear me and see me talking about Tool nonstop, now you know why. You can blame him. And he and I, took the web analytics world by storm as much as we could. He ended up leaving at some point, and then another colleague took over the team, Brian Wells, who's now at Adobe. And I like to say I stayed on the web analytics Razorfish for so long, running the team. So then Brian left for Adobe, and I took over to manage the team, expanded our remit to include personalization and tag management. At that time, I think we were charging like $80,000 a year to create solution designs and to QA web analytics implementations before the world of tag management. But yeah, then tag management got big. Search Discovery sold satellite to Adobe. Very coincidentally, Lee Blankenship happened to be in New York City a few weeks later. We grabbed dinner, and before you know it, I had a job at Search Discovery.
Sorry, I'm going to interrupt your story, but so
Please.
I was at Search Discovery, just like I left Omniture just before the Adobe acquisition. I left Search Discovery 2 weeks before they announced they were acquiring Satellite. Which also means that I missed you by just mere months, I believe. That we could have been coworkers all the way back then. It worked out well in the end, but
it certainly did. I'm glad that it worked out the way that it did for you, Jen. I remember being in my apartment and getting a phone call from Lee before I started working at Search Discovery and before the acquisition, saying like, "Hey, I have great news." And I'm like, "Okay, great. What's the news?" And he says, "Every Adobe customer is going to become a satellite customer." And I'm like, "That is great news. How are you going to make that happen?" He said, "Well, we're getting acquired." And then a few hours later, the news hit the PR news got out. So I was super excited about it. And so yeah, I got to work with folks like Michael Helbling and Lee Blankenship and a whole slew of other brilliant folks that have come through the halls at Search Discovery. And I ended up consulting with them for 2.5 years before my old friend Brian Wells, who was my manager at Razorfish, gave me a call and said, "Hey, there's this role open at Adobe for the analytics evangelist. I think you should apply." And I said, "No way. Brilliant people like Brent Dykes are analytics evangelists. I'm just the guy that tweets at Ben Gaines and jokes about like Philly sports and asks him why, Saint classifications work the way they do." And Brian said, "No, I really think you should apply." And so I was like, "All right," updated my resume and ended up with the job offer in about 2 weeks. And not an easy decision, but I knew like this role was perfect. And if we get it, I'm not going to say it on recording, but I'll tell you, if anyone comes up to me at Summit, if you're at Summit and you want to know what Michael Helbling said to me when I told him I was getting this role, let's talk about it in person because it was really funny. Yeah, I'm leaving that as a cliffhanger for you. So yeah, and then I've been in this role for 8.5 years. It's been an awesome ride during those 8.5 years. I've presented during keynote demos. I'm now hosting Sneaks for the third time in let's see, 4 weeks and 6 days. And I get the opportunity to work with customers. I've released 3 LinkedIn learning courses and Adobe Analytics for Dummies and all sorts of fun stuff. So I love the opportunity to help our customers get more value out of our products. And I couldn't be in a better place to do that. So perhaps maybe a longer story than you're looking for, but you now know everything about how I ended up here. Thanks to the Gens for showing off the goods.
Free advertisement. Oh, and there's Jeff too.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, I've got like 20 of them over here, so don't worry.
Oh,
Here it is.
I have one on a shelf somewhere over there.
There you go. All right, so that's my story. Ben, what you got?
Yeah, well, mine is probably more straightforward. I've been with Omniture and then Adobe for 96% of my career. My villain, if there is one, I mean, there are a few villains. One was me. One was the company the startup I was working for. Startup might be too strong a word. Before. So my origin story, I guess, I mean, if we're not going to go all the way back to when I was a teenager, I am going to go back that far. I remember being in 7th grade and learning about the internet for the first time and thinking that this is the coolest thing I've ever heard, and like rushing to create a website. I did a newsletter on college football, and I had a little AOL website, and you could vote on, you could do your rankings of teams and things, and I would publish that out to my subscribers and stuff. And I had a little hit counter on there, and this was 1995 or something, 94. And I thought that little counter was the coolest thing I had ever seen. I guess after the internet, which I just said was the coolest thing I had ever seen. And I just loved the idea that you could count stuff on the internet. You could count people coming to your website, and I had absolutely no idea what was in store for me. But fast forward to I was in college, and a friend of mine was like, "Hey, we need my company, Utah.com, needs someone to do some search engine optimization for our customers." They had like a bunch of the small businesses in small tourism businesses in Utah, individual hotels and restaurants and things, were customers of Utah.com to build their websites and maintain their websites. So they needed someone to do search engine optimization. I had never heard of search engine optimization, but I did know a little bit of, HTML, JavaScript, CSS. So I figured, how hard can this be? I wasn't great at SEO. I also was 22, was finishing up college, 22, 23, and was really stupid.
What was your undergraduate degree in?
Oh, do you remember the answer to that?
I know that it's not analytics related, but
definitely not. Nope, it was history. Okay, I was going to go to law school, and then I realized I was going to hate being spending years in a law library and just did not have the passion for it. So I stuck with history because I loved history, but I didn't have that career plan coming out of the back end of a degree that, you can go be a museum curator or a librarian. That You know,
It's like I was a linguistics major. I wasn't planning on a
right.
career.
Yeah,
So.
I do remember, because every time there's a linguistics question, I think of Jen.
Huh.
So, so history major, doing SEO for Utah.com, and so I was really stupid, and so this is why I'm the villain. I just didn't take it very seriously. 12-person company. They needed somebody to like really kind of own this client fulfillment work. They needed a consultant who was like self-motivated and just intrinsically like wanted to step up, and I was just sort of mailing it in. And so between that and the fact that the company wasn't really growing, I will say, and I will cop to this on recording. I'm just going to admit it. So they were using web trends like Serverlog, web trends from the 90s, and this was 2004-ish. So this company called Urchin got acquired by this company called Google, and I was in search engine optimization. There's obviously enough overlap there that I picked up on the news and was like, hey, we should implement this Google Analytics thing. And so I implemented, I helped Utah.com implement Google Analytics. And that led to, eventually there was a call with Omniture, this company down the road, and there had been a Utah.com employee who'd gone to work for Omniture. He's actually still at Adobe today. Jen, you'll remember Josh Damer from consulting from years and years ago. So Josh had been at Utah.com. Anyway, so there's all this, this just down the road. And so in a way, like that Google Analytics implementation was kind of my origin story. But led to sales calls with Omniture, and then the company, to get back to my narrative, the company wasn't really growing, and they were like, you're not quite serious enough for what we need. Like, what you need is a slightly bigger company where they're not, at your age, didn't have a family, wasn't married, didn't have a house. Like, I wasn't really thinking career, where you can, go and like kind of find your way and, decide how much ownership you want to take over, what you're doing day to day. So we have this friend of mine, Josh, is at Omniture. Why don't I connect you with Josh, and you can see how it goes. And that led to some interviews. And in a way, I guess the other villain is Utah.com for basically saying, yeah, you should take this Omniture job, because like we're not going to retain you. So that was a bit of a wake-up call, and I kind of went into it. It was actually really good, because I showed up at Omniture with a bit of a chip on my shoulder, in a way, like feeling like the world had kind of called me lazy, and I wanted to kind of change that narrative about myself, and for my own, sort of my own self-confidence and feelings of self-worth. Like I was like, I'm really going to go for this. And it helped that everyone was like, it was a very exciting time to be at Omniture. It was, the pre-IPO, but like right on the verge of IPO. And so people were all pumped up. We were, winning. Like, I was there when Disney became an Adobe customer.
I was going to say Disney. That's the big one that I remember.
Yeah, everyone got their Donald Duck stuffed animals the next morning, and it was, they gave everyone a bunch of stuff. So yeah, that's a good memory. It's funny that we both remember that. So that
we walked in, and it was like walking into the Disney store.
It was crazy. It was crazy. Yeah, it was like I was, in customer care. Like, I don't think I knew even that we were trying to get Disney at that point. So anyway, did that for a while, kind of, moved up through customer care. To make a long story short, I think the big kind of pivot point or turning point in my career at Omniture / Adobe was, I guess I had carved out a reputation for like writing good answers to support tickets. So this thing called Twitter came along, and people were complaining about Site Catalyst on this app. I don't think, I don't think we even called it an app back then. Smartphones were barely a thing. It was a website. It was a social media site. And they needed someone who, they could trust to be out there responding, without saying stupid stuff or without flying off the handle. And so I did that, and that allowed me to kind of get outside of just the hey, this thing is broken, can you help me fix it, of customer care, and really learn more about how you all are thinking about analytics careers and building analytics organizations and the challenges that you're facing with executives and with things that aren't like expressly part of what was then the Site Catalyst world, now the Adobe Analytics world. And that sort of gave me a bridge into product management, because product management really is all about like trying to understand the world that you all as Adobe customers are in, and the challenges you're facing day to day, and how can we help resolve some of those challenges and make life better for you. So that was kind of, when a product management role came along, and I knew that I kind of wanted to do that because there were people like Brett Gunderson and Chris Wareham, and who, I don't know who remembers who, but Brett Gunderson's still around. Matt Freestone is still around. Dave McNamee. Like, I wanted to hang out with these guys. They seemed like they knew what they were talking about, and knew the product and the industry inside and out. So when a role opened up, and it was a new college grad role, and I was finishing business school part-time, and the timing just worked out, and I had this experience that allowed me to have more industry knowledge than I maybe would have otherwise. I jumped at it. And so I guess I never actually said my role, but now I lead a team of product managers working on Adobe Analytics and CJA and content analytics and AI and all kinds of fun things. So that's my story.
So it's funny because you mentioned the Twitter thing, and so I never planned on having a career. I went to Omniture for a few years just to get my husband through the end of college, and then I was going to be a stay-at-home mom, hence the linguistics degree. And we did that for a few years, and it turns out that I am too validation needy to be a stay-at-home mom, and I could make more money than my high school teacher husband. So I came back in, 2011, 2012, I started thinking about coming back into the industry, and I reached out to my friend Ben and said so. And he's like, oh, well, you need to get on Twitter. That's hashtag measure. Twitter is going to be the best way for you to like build your reputation and a network and all of that. And so I did. And sure enough, that is 100% like how my career got started back up, because that's how I got to Keystone, was through getting to know people on Twitter, including my current boss, Jason Thompson, who like it all comes back to Ben yet again.
That's flattering. But anyway,
all three of us were involved with Ben on Twitter, is what it seems like.
We did, yeah. And you were like, Eric, you were like the last person that I had interacted with a ton that I actually met in person, like at some. It took us until like 2011 or 2012 to actually meet at a summit. After dozens of tweets and other whatever social networks we were on back and forth.
Yeah.
Anyway, there you have it.
All right. Well, I think all of you sort of touched on your villains as part of your origin stories, but I don't know if you guys want to talk about, if there's any other villains that you've had to deal with, and maybe you can combine it with what type of heroes you think are needed going forward, since we are getting low on time and we want to make sure people have a chance to also ask their questions. So open discussion, I guess, rather than one at a time. I like this interaction.
I can do a quick one. For me, the villain, my biggest villain, I think, in my career for the last 15 years of it, has been imposter syndrome. It's my villain. I just genuinely think that I am pulling the wool over people's eyes, and I see all the things I don't know, and it's like I should not be making decisions. So that's mine. I'm trying to believe people more and accept compliments, and not discount. I can always find a way to counter your compliment of me if I try hard enough. So I'm trying to not do that. That's my villain.
I cannot imagine you having imposter syndrome.
Everybody
Me?
who has imposter syndrome, raise your hand.
Yep.
Yeah.
There you go. Not Eric. Eric knows he's great.
No, that's exactly what I was gonna say. Is like if you've worked with me or seen me on stage, then you'll know that imposter syndrome is not something I deal with, and I think that is kind
That's
of
good.
why maybe Ben and I are pair so well as superhero tandem, is because we kind of fill in each other's gaps when it comes to our villains or deficiencies or things like that. So it actually kind of works out nicely.
Yeah.
Ben's got a good therapist in me as best I can. And I'll add that my villain also is me as well. But like during one particular consulting engagement that I had, it wasn't going well. Um, the client wasn't updating the data layers and, not just discussing things, not communicating well. And I took that as like, okay, well, whatever, we'll figure it out. And eventually we'll get there. And then all of a sudden, before I knew it, it was like a week before the new site was going to launch with all the new tags on it and all that good stuff. And we had like 20% of things ready and where they needed to be. And so I like pulled in, instead of like asking for help and communicating, I just like pulled in all-nighter and tried to create as many data elements and rules as I possibly could, which is not ideal. And especially because of what I had planned during that launch was for my wife and I to fly to Costa Rica for the week and be completely out of pocket with very minimal Wi-Fi, no laptops, and all of that. So it's like maybe Wednesday or Thursday, and I finally get to the point where like, oh no, I gotta tell someone that this is a problem because this is a problem. And so I did. I told my manager at the time, and I was like, and also don't forget, I'm out next week and like in a remote area. And I like the team rallied and like figured out a way to get as much improved as possible, fixing my overnight, all-nighter of data elements and rules and things like that. And I remember being in Costa Rica, like I'd get off the beach, go to the hotel, try to connect to the Wi-Fi, and if it worked, look at my emails, and it was just like email, 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 email. What was Eric thinking? What was Eric doing?
Oh, no.
What, like, how can we fix this? Okay, let's go. Okay, all right, here we go. And I'm like subscribed to like Jira or whatever we're using at the time. And so um, it ended up working out. The company is still a big Adobe customer. And what I learned is like proactive communication is huge. And like that was a like huge turning point for me in my career of like how important it is to just like when you see a potential problem, share it, man. Like let people know. And like, we're like I said, 4 weeks and 4 days away from the keynote of Summit. And if anyone that has worked with me at Adobe knows, I'm the first one to say like, this is a problem, that's a problem, this is a problem. And I'll say it to someone that reports to me, someone that I report to, or VP or an SVP. I don't care. Like if there's a problem, I'm gonna let you know, and it's all because I went to Costa Rica.
I'm trying to
So
think
that's my villain.
what a
Costa
villain.
Rica is my villain.
Costa Rica. I think for me, both the villain and the, I don't know, sidekick or the anti-hero, I don't know, is sort of like overcommitment. Both like personally in that I want to do all the things. I give away way too much free work. But in doing so, I've also learned a lot. Like a lot of the experience and value that I bring is because I've spent a lot of time on Measure Slack and Adobe Forums and all of that. But also I think for my clients, I see a lot of like overcommitment of, well, we have analytics, we're not getting everything we want out of it. So instead of investing more in it, we're going to buy this other tool and this other tool and this other tool. And hopefully some combination thereof is going to magically make everything more valuable. And we're all just spread very thin and trying to maintain too many things at once. But like at least personally, I think a lot of the success I've had in my career has just been from not saying no and not having boundaries. But taking whatever opportunity I can to learn, even if it's outside of my role, because you never know what's going to maybe become part of your role, like consent management suddenly became for me. So, but there are a lot of really good opportunities both through Adobe and you guys are also overcommitters on the community advisory board and the champions program and all of that. But yeah, if I give anyone career advice, it's just that is find opportunities even outside of your role to learn more and get exposure to things, because that's how you learn and grow.
Definitely.
Even if it's exhausting and you have to figure out where to draw the line sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely love that. We haven't had any questions come in. I think everyone has just been like so, just enthralled listening to you. So because there's been no questions, I guess we'll just go on to the next, kind of standard one we've got, which is, what future threats do you guys see to the state of the analytics world? Like, what do you think, we need to watch out for, or kind of like take a step back, rather than like pushing forward?
So one that we've been discussing, and I mean, I guess this group will be the first to hear about what we've been talking about internally, is the change to the web. I mean, this is a piece of analytics, I guess, but I think it answers the question. The change to the web that agents may represent. I mean, everyone's seen the OpenAI operator demo, and the way that you analyze what an agent is doing on behalf of a human is different than the way that you analyze what a human is doing on behalf of a human. So we're not my team, but a peer team of mine in the analytics product business is working on figuring out what can we do, like what can we do with what we have today, and what recommendations do we need to put together, kind of establish standards and best practices and things for a world where part of what you're analyzing and part of what you're optimizing for, like, it's not just this was an agent and this was a human. It's like I saw a LinkedIn post just last night about a designer who was asked to kind of redesign Airbnb for agents, like for agent browsing, and the things you do with white space are different, and the things you lay out, like, you don't need to be as thoughtful about aesthetics because the agent doesn't care, and like that's going to be a completely different category of optimization from what we have traditionally done, always thinking about how to make things better for human beings. So that's one that we're working on. We know it's coming in some form. Like, it'll probably have its trough of disillusionment, and people will say that thing, was so dumb. Why did we think about that? And then it'll, come back, and it'll be a real thing in a few years. So our goal is to be ready for that. But that's one that I'm thinking about a lot.
Interesting. That's cool. I like hearing that, Ben. It's
even Eric didn't know that we were thinking about that.
No.
Yeah, if we don't, like, Adobe, I mean, so to me, what scares me is, like, if that tipping point happens and we're not like there, I mean, that's the one thing that Adobe should be ahead of, and like should have an answer ready for all of you and all of our customers. Like, if that starts to become a real common thing, like if we don't, then we're a dinosaur. Like we're immediately a dinosaur, I feel like. So sorry. Now you know, Eric.
Yeah. All right. My answer is Ben's answer. My answer is maybe like a little less futuristic, and more of like the threat we're kind of all facing now, right? Which is this kind of minimalization of the concept of analytics. Like we, like a lot of people watch sports and hear like announcers say like the analytics say do this, and of course, like I just got a whole stuff over here like go birds, but most importantly, um like the analytics say go for it, or the analytics say this, and then like if it's wrong, then everyone's like, oh, the analytics are awful, it's analytics' fault, like this coach is an analytics guy, let's get rid of him, and like all these things. Um and I feel like it's kind of minimalizing the work that a lot of us are doing in terms of the difference between reporting and proper analysis. Reporting on the past and identifying opportunities for improvement for the future. And I mean, like, I probably could have said the same thing in 2007 when I joined Razorfish and was analyzing Atlas data. But the thing is now, like, people are more and more aware of it, right? Like, we've even gone past the point of data scientists being like the sexiest job on earth. Now it's just like, oh, they're lame because my quarterback didn't score a touchdown. So like that's kind of like the threat that I see is like this world where everyone just assumes like a BI dashboard is good enough. And like, okay, great, we can see that things are going up. We don't need to know anything more. And yeah, that's kind of where I think I have an opportunity to help as well. So I'm glad Ben's working on the operator stuff. Jen?
I think I kind of already hinted at it. It's kind of my soapbox of we're focusing so much on instrumentation, on getting the data, or on fighting bad data quality issues. And yes, data quality issues are no longer just that the devs screwed up the data layer. It's also the bots and the AI and the gazillion tools everybody's trying to instrument at once. But yeah, it just feels like so much effort is going into the setting up and the potential that all of these things that we're doing have, that we're not actually doing the things that provide value back. Now, mind you, I make a living instrumenting all of these tools, so I can't really say like stop doing that. But and I know that I also have a biased view because I'm only brought in when people are expanding and dealing with data quality issues and trying to add to their platform. But it used to be that when folks asked what I do for a living, I could say, oh, I work in user experience data. That was the most unobjectionable way to put it, that not like Big Brother stalking you on the internet kind of. And these days, it feels like user experience, like actually using the data to go back and improve the user experience, is a tiny portion of what we do. And now I work on instrumenting tools that'll help companies build user profiles for various purposes, but it is all about building user profiles. So yeah, I think I fear us losing our roots a little bit with grand ambitions and forgetting that ultimately the goal here is to provide users better experiences. So.
All right, I'm just going to share for the recording. Yeah, the one comment was, you do the exact opposite of what I do when I describe what I do. I go the Big Brother route.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, we are coming up on time, but I guess, any final words of encouragement, something that you love or something that you can encourage other people here to, build their own origin stories?
Thank you, Jen.
Sorry,
Yeah.
who?
I don't mind going. Ben looks quiet. So my suggestion is to do what I do. Do what Jen does, do what Ben does. Share the knowledge to others, and the more people that you help, the higher you'll rise. There's nothing that makes me happier than seeing that, people are getting value from the content that we put out there, and value from the and learning and knowledge, and we're positively affecting the way that people use the technology in our industry. That's what gets me up in the morning.
And I just want to piggyback on that because it's such a good point. Everyone here probably knows more than they realize they know. And by having those conversations, by trying to share that knowledge, you actually, you start to realize just how much you actually have inside of you to share with the world and to have open discussions and to grow.
Well,
Yeah, if you keep it all to yourself, then you become the villain.
I love it.
Well, and I for me, so much of that sharing, it does make you a little bit vulnerable, particularly with all of the newer things coming in. Like, can anyone really feel 100% confident about AEP and CJA stuff enough that I know when I open my mouth, I'm not going to say something wrong, or that at least that's not the bestest practice? So a lot of it is just being vulnerable and saying, hey, this is what I figured out works. Help me improve upon it. And our industry is fantastic for that. Very few of, apparently Eric did major in something computery, but many of us started with something that had nothing to do with this. Nobody was in this industry because it's like what our dad did for a living or something. Like, we're all here because we saw a gap, and we are curious, and we like to learn, and we stepped up and filled that gap. And therefore we have an industry full of helpful, smart people. Which is really fantastic. So I say lean into that, and be willing to put yourself out there and expose perhaps a lack of knowledge, because as Jen just said, you probably know more than you're really aware of. And it's by saying out loud what you know and admitting there might be gaps that you establish expertise, but really make those connections with people who can help you grow even further. And the Adobe space is a weird small industry too. You don't know. The person that you helped yesterday might be your client or your boss, or you might manage them. Like, having been in this space for 18 years, people come back around. So yeah, remembering that in your interactions is important.
Yeah, that's a great tip.
Yeah, I want to second that idea of like just being able to kind of like share that knowledge and just like teach people what you know, because one of the things, even if you're not someone that like wants to share out, or like, oh, I don't feel like I can be a great teacher, the biggest benefit, like selfishly, is that you're going to know how well you know it. Because the best way to learn something is to try teaching it to somebody else, because that is when you're going to realize, wait a minute, I don't really understand this piece. And it makes it an opportunity for you to have better growth, because you realize, oh, here's an area where I don't know as well. And it kind of just builds on itself. And it's just a great habit to get into. And honestly, from my experience with the community in general, like I think everyone's pretty welcoming and open. I think it's a change we've seen dramatically from the past like 10 years, where people had the real secret sauce, like, oh, this is how I'm going to do this. It's my like way. And like people are now sharing that more openly. Like I think it's becoming more and more just like, and as we do that, the community gets better, and like the work we do gets better, which is awesome.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for having us.
Yes, so thank you for being here. We appreciate, and we love hearing the stories, and we love the interaction. And I think our audience would agree.
Awesome.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun.
Hope to see you all at Summit. Thank you.
Yep.
Bye.
Thank you all for coming.